Testy, testy, testy. Yeah, I can never get this right. Yeah, today it's 7th of July 24, Sunday. It's election day in France, round two of the French elections for, what do they call it, the House or something? What do they call it? Let's see if we can. And I'm calling it D-Day, small D-Day for Europe, the West. Possibly one is saved day. Yeah, because that's how important I think this is. Test. I'm using the mic today. I'm using the 11 pound I got from Amazon in July 23 because my mics are good. Yeah, that's how important I think this election is. Because this is the first chance. This is even more exciting than the election we just had because the people are still in denial. Basically, women are still in denial. The nice women of the West still in denial, and are not saying anything about the great mistake. And it's going to be bad for everybody. It's going to be anarchy for everyone. It's going to be bad for everyone. Well, it's just a prediction, just the same as others are predicting. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine, even better than fine. It's going to be great. It's okay to predict that. It doesn't seem okay to use your logic and think, oh, hang on, this has never been before. To me, it's as if it's going to be really bad, and it is pretty bad already. Look at crime stories, that, yeah. That's ironic in Britain because Tony Blair, Labour just came with a broad and very shallow landslide. They got a majority of 170 seats, 112 or something, and they got 34% of the vote, and they get just like less votes than Corbyn. For Keir, this type of democracy, Corbyn is elected to the 18 with more votes than them, So that's what he thinks of democracy, really. So this in France, this finally, after 40 years, because the reason there's a round two is because the establishment and the ultra-nice parties rigged the electoral system so that the probable winners of today's couldn't win seats in the 80s. They were starting to get support. I think it was a PR system, a local PR system or regional or something. And they were starting to get support in the 80s, and rightly so. There was a guy in Britain in the late 60s who predicted how things would go. And he even mentioned a city when he predicted that. He mentioned Birmingham, how Birmingham would go. And to me, he's probably the greatest politician in the last, since I can remember, 100 years or whatever, I don't know. Just for saying the obvious back in the late 60s, he tried to say, hang on, nice British, you're making a terrible mistake here. And people did, some didn't listen, but the establishment parties ran him out of town, really. And they told everyone you can't vote for parties like that, especially women. And because the women of Europe are be nice, that is if you were to describe the women of the West in a brief sentence, I would say be nice. That is their way. So, yeah, and this is how this all came about, because I've been nice. And a lot of people don't feel that way about their countries. And we've ended up we're just going for a total mix of chaos, because most of the countries people are coming from do very badly on a UN index on LGB and women's rights. And not only have we got one group from that, we've taken all the groups in. We've taken anti-government of a place in the Middle East and pro-government. So we've got the two sides. We've taken in the two sides from all these tribal things, or even 3 or 4 sides. Everyone's moved over here. They've abandoned their homelands, beautiful warm countries. The only reason people should be moving is for warmth and beauty of land. That's the only reason people should be moving a bit. So people should be moving to Africa, Asia. And the other way around, you wonder why. Especially to cold wet election. As I say, people wanted to vote for this party, and the women have gone against the establishment. And I think your daughter and granddaughter, what kind of France are going to be brought up. And I mean, I think it's more than to say that France is unstable and it's not going to work. What's happened. And it's silly. The thing that's happened is silly across the whole of the West. Taking totally stable countries, and no country should be unstable in 2024. The most desirable countries should be the beautiful warm countries, like Africa and Asia, especially China, because that's the second biggest economy, maybe the biggest, and yet living to America. That tells you what more. It has nothing to do with the economy. And that middle class, they're going to Central America and getting cars up to the border and then just walking more like everybody else, or paying smugglers and come in from San Diego. I think. So, yeah, this could be Women's Saviour Day or D-Day for West Europe. I think all that fighting went on in the Second World War, and really it's from what I'm seeing for the future. I think the ones that fought then and the ones that died, it would make them cry to see Britain now, and to think that the bridgehead was round about North France, the English Channel, Calais and that. And here we are 70 years later, and it's 75 years later, 8 years actually. It would make them cry to see what's happening in English Channel now. And that's only the illegal type, The would make them even cry more. Yeah, and it's ironic because Tony Blair's made a statement to the Times, or he wrote for the Times, and he said Labour need to focus on 3 things. They need to focus on, they need to be careful about wokeism. They need to deal with a problem with a community of a religion. Which really, I'm surprised that a politician could say such a thing. It was meant to be great. It wasn't meant to be great. I thought there'd be a sort of crime to say something like that, even if it's what he believes to be the truth or whatever. As a former PM, we're all turning around this. And the other thing he said 3 things. Tony Blair. To deal with Immy, which, I mean, these 3 things he talked about is why I voted Reformer. There was more than that for Reform, not just that community, a whole concept of from countries that are in the UN index for women's rights and LGBT, etc. You could use them to judge if people should get in the country, those 2 things, but they don't. Let me see. So these 3 things that Tony Blair said, 71-year-old Tony, I mean, I think I would elect him as the Tory leader if he said that. because even the Tories haven't said that sort of thing. Um, and that's why I voted Reform, basically. So it is. And this is Tony, because I know he said this when he left office. He said he wished he'd done a lot more, especially in the early years, because that's when you get the quote goodwill. Although they've got a shallow, broad goodwill, really, because they get less votes in England than Corbyn did in 2019. And in Wales, they get less as well. There's only Scotland that sort of put them 1% above Corbyn in 2019 on vote count. So it was just that the Tories totally collapsed, and the Reform done well, 4.1 million, but not as well as hoped. But the only reason that I think people like me are voting for a Reform, because I used to vote Left, is because of this one thing, one subject, multi, mainly, just multi, how it's going to be a disaster for everyone, going to cause anarchy. It's never been tried before. Humanity's been around, what? I can't remember, 3 million years, maybe not as much as that. It's only been tried since post-war. This, yeah. So to hear Tony Blair saying that, and I'm guessing he's saying it on behalf of Keir. So I think Labour MPs and activists are going to get a bit of a shock. You've got Tony Blair sounding like Suella Braverman, but even better than Suella Braverman, actually, in my opinion, who I think should be the new leader of the Tories, but it's too late for the Tories, I think, really, though. Yeah. So I think Labour MPs and activists are going to get a bit of a shock about that. And Keir's let him say that on his behalf. And Keir's also brought in old-timers from the old Labour government. He's made them, take them to the House of Lords and that, giving them peerages and that. So it looks as if this is going to be Blair too, which I think is a sensible. I think it's the best thing Labour can do, because to me Blair was a great leader. He made mistakes, but even back then he said there's a problem with integration with a certain community back in, I remember him saying when about 2008 and all that, but he didn't do anything about MA or multi. And yeah, because Nigel Farage keeps pointing this out. We used to deport thousands of people up to 2010, then it stopped under Cameron. Still not enough though. So yeah. So it looks as if he's going to be Blair's thing for the most part, and I think that's the best Labour can do, really. Especially if they do focus on these three things that Blair said, but I'm guessing they won't, because the other thing is Keir's manifesto really didn't make any promises, really, apart from they're not going to raise income tax or national insurance, I think. They didn't say anything, and I think Blair's told them, don't make promises, just say things that's going to be great, and that's what Trump does, Yeah, so I've talked enough about Britain and that. So Britain, also I think Labour, they could just fall, basically, because of unrest, maybe civil unrest amongst the natives, really, because this thing about multi and that, I don't think the natives, I think everybody would agree it's looking like a mistake. Probably was a bad idea, even from the start. The countries people are coming from, they're still the same, still homogenous and that. Yeah, and that's probably very important to their diaspora in the West. Maybe if they get a vote, they would vote really hard to the right side on that issue, purity or whatever. Meanwhile, the natives are not allowed to vote that way in the UK, and we have to vote for the borders of open parties, basically, including the Tories, really, or the very leaky borders, loopholes galore. So that was interesting by Tony Blair. So we'll see how that goes anyway. But like I say, I think this government might fall within 6 months even, because they've not really got any. They've got less support than Corbyn had in 2019. They've got a totally. It showed up how rubbish our electoral system is, as it should be PR. Switzerland's the only country that has a decent democracy. Quarterly referendum and big issues like Malta and MA. So I'm watching this French election tonight. I think the polls close at 7 o'clock, and then we'll get the exit poll. So that's an hour's time. And I'm really excited about this. And I really hope, because Macron and that have teamed up with the ultra-far leftists who regard themselves as the ultra-nice. In real terms, it could be regarded the ultra-violent nice. The violent ultra-nice. Because there's probably going to be riots tonight again from them. So Macron's teamed up with all these sort of people. The whole establishment's teamed together to beat the pooled candidates, so that there's 500 seats up for grabs tonight. The lady who leads the party that the French aren't allowed to vote for, she needs about 280 seats to get a majority in the House. I don't know what their system's like. I thought their president ran everything, basically. But maybe he is only foreign affairs mostly, and this House is like Westminster. It's not as good as much powers as Westminster, but yeah, she needs to get about 280 seats. And if the election had went as normal, we have maybe 3 parties, and that she would have probably got them according to the polls. But now that Macron's done a deal with the left, and there's only one competitor against, and the idea is you're voting against the party you're not allowed to vote for. The French natives aren't allowed to vote for this party. So they've rigged it, Macron and the left, and the ultra-violent left as well, ultra-nice violent left. So that it's just them against the other side. Because usually, you've got 3 parties or whatever. But anyway, and if they get elected, you're going to have lots of leftists, the ultra-nice leftists and all this getting in. It's going to be a disaster, that thing. But at the moment, the party you're not allowed to vote for is expected to get about 220 seats maximum, maybe. But I'm really hoping it all depends on women of the West. In this case, French women. It all depends on French women. Use your common sense. You've wanted to vote. I mean, it's always felt that everybody's uneasy about what's happening, and we're going to end up voting for the only parties that offer an answer about that, a realistic answer, even if they're too soft. So, but we've always been told you're not allowed. I mean, I personally would have no problem voting for the strictest on this in Britain now, but you can't say any names apart from Reform. You're allowed. They're socially acceptable now. Not socially acceptable. You're allowed to say them. You're allowed to vote for them, basically, without the police visiting you or something, But yeah, so it's all down to the women. All these countries are West. It's all down to the women. I think everybody thinks it's a mistake, including the newcomers who don't want to live in their beautiful, warm, homogeneous homelands. Everyone agrees it's a mistake the natives have made of these countries, or the settlers who created the nice bit that the newcomers want to move to. In fact, it's top of their list: USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. So that just shows you anyone can build a country, desirable country. Nothing's stopping any country in Africa or Asia becoming desirable, for the people who live there, the homogenous ancestral people. Nothing's stopping them. For some reason, they don't trust their thingies or whatever to do that or whatever, especially the middle class. As soon as they get a middle class, they're paying smugglers to get them into the West, or paying for loopholes, looking for loopholes. Yeah, because that's what George Galloway, his Workers' Party, I think his policy on Mass Mai was very strict. And he said, because it's bad for these countries, we're taking brain draining them and that. It is ironic. I think that's partly why he didn't do so good, because his party's based in one community and they want the opposite. Probably, they want away from their homelands and they want to just become bigger and bigger here. And I don't think women of the West don't understand that you're going to be a minority. I don't think they understand that yet. And I don't think anybody in any country would think that's a sensible thing for our native people, It's not going to happen in Africa or Asia, probably, by the looks of it, or the Middle East or anything. It's not even probably going to get 1%, 2% of mass unnatural. I mean, yeah. So I'm really looking forward to this tonight. The poll's in about an hour, the exit poll, I should tell us. As I say, the establishment and the violent ultra-nice and everybody have ganged up, so it's a two-horse race. You're meant to vote for the Macron and the left if you're a nice French person. But this is the third election in a month in France. The first one was a month ago, and it was the EU election. And at the last election, 21% of women voted for the party you're not allowed to vote for in France. But this time, 33% voted. And amongst men, it went from 27 to about 30%. So it's never been heard before that women are voting for a party you're not meant to vote for. So maybe this is why Macron called an election now. I don't know. It was maybe in 6 months' time or something. He done the same as Rishi and Thingy. I don't know what he was thinking. But he called an election, and last week, the party you're not allowed to vote for, French women, 32% voted for him, and this time 36% men. So, and when you think that 32% of women, I think France, newcomers have made it, or maybe 20% of the population. I saw someone say 15%, but I don't think so. Probably 20%. So that's 32% of 100% minus 20%, So you're maybe talking of French native women, maybe 40% voted for the party that they're not allowed to vote for, or 42%. So I think they're finally using their common sense. Yeah, and this time usually the lady leader of the party you're not allowed to vote for in France, she usually goes soft during the election to try and woo voters. But this time it doesn't look as if she has, and thank goodness. That's a mistake they keep making. They keep going soft to try and please the establishment and the left. Don't go soft. I mean, that's what Tony Blair's saying in Britain as well. The right's not at PM, you know. Yeah. So hopefully women, because really it's up to women to save these countries, the West. It's the women. You've really got to make them understand, And a lot of times I think they want to, but they keep getting put off because of the establishment and the left are saying if you vote for that party, you're a bad person, So you've got to use your common sense because it's in everyone's interest. Having an anarchic France isn't good for anybody. Going the path you're going isn't good for anybody. It's going to be bad for everyone, So we've just got to, and really, what's happened since post-war is silly. And so it's really got to stop. You've really got to tell them, no, stop. And even reverse now, really. And nothing would make me happier than helping countries around the world become desirable to the people who live there, especially beautiful, warm countries, But it looks like they want to abandon their beautiful, warm countries. And that tells you a lot, tells you everything, really. You don't need to ask anything else. And I noticed that Jonathan Ashworth, the Labour MP in Leicester, lost his seat on Thursday night, and he was going on last year in Question Time about Suella says that I think Suella mentioned Leicester or something, saying how it's volatile, and he was saying in Question Time, we celebrate all the different religious things, and none. Everyone's happy in Leicester, but he's been kicked out for a quote independent who happens to be probably the main community he identifies with him there, because Leicester's the first minority majority city in Britain, and that's how the whole native women have to understand. That's how the whole of the country is going to go, and then they're going to be in charge of the laws to do with women's rights and the LGBT, etc. As an example, which might appeal to women, an example of thing they should be aware of. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this French election. This is part one. I'll see how it goes. All right. Goodbye.